Poems to a Listener, readings and conversation with contemporary poets.
I reached home. I knelt to the mother, to the womb that had borne me. At my father's grave I stayed kneeling as the dusk came down. He did not speak, but he felt my kneeling. Of this I am certain. It made a small bright ripple on the minds of the dead. A few onlookers followed me in the blue twilight. Where will you go now? They wanted to know. I will go to the house of my childhood, I said, and there I will kneel and kneel down for a while.
Welcome to Poems to a Listener. I'm Henry Lyman, and in this half-hour program, we'll be visiting with poet Tess Gallagher and listening to poems drawn mostly from her books, Under Stars and Willingly, both published by Grey Wolf Press, poems remembering especially her late father, who was a logger, millworker, and longshoreman in Port Angeles, Washington.
This is a mill town, also a logging town, facing the Straits of Juan de Fuca. The house that I was raised in is just a small wood-framed house right above the mill, and you could always hear this mill humming, and the smell of sulfur, which is used to make the paper, was always in the air.
As you say in the poem, you kneel at your father's grave.
Yes, that sense of paying homage to the childhood and those people who gave you life.
It's a place of reverence.
Right, yeah. Black money. His lungs heaving all day in a sulfur mist, then dusk, the lunch pail torn from him before he reaches the house, his children, a cloud of swallows about him. At the stove in the tumbled rooms, the wife, her back the wall he fights most, and she with no weapon but silence, and to keep him from the bed. In their sleep the mill hums and turns at the edge of water. Blue smoke swells the night, and they drift from the graves they have made for each other, float out from the open-mouthed sleep of their children, past banks and businesses, the used car lots, liquor store, the swings in the park. The mill burns on, now a burst of cinders, now whistles screaming down the bay, saws jagged in half-light. Then, like a whip, the sun across the bed, windows high with mountains, and the sleepers fallen to pillows, as gulls fall, tilting against their shadows on the log booms. Again the trucks shutter the wood-frame houses, passing to the mill. My father snorts, splashes in the bathroom, throws open our doors to cowboy music. On the radio, hearts are cheating. Somebody is alone. There's blood in Tulsa. Out the backyard, the night shift men rattle the gravel in the alley, going home. My father fits goggles to his head. From his pocket he takes anything metal, the pearl-handled jackknife, a ring of keys, and for us, black money, shoveled from the sulfur pyramids heaped in the distance, like yellow gold. Coffee bottle tucked in his armpit, he swaggers past the chicken coop, a pack of cards at his breast. In a fan of light beyond him, the Quignon Maru pulls out for Seattle, some black star climbing the deep globe of his eye.
What's black money?
Well, that happens when you go to work in the sulfur and you have your money, your change loose in your pocket, and the sulfur gets in there and it tarnishes the money. It turns the money black.
Now, this was a pulp mill you worked in?
Pulp mill, yes, and sulfur is used to process the pulp of the tree into paper.
I imagine some of that sulfur got in his lungs, too.
Yes, it did, yeah. He always had a cigarette cough because he smoked cigarettes from the age of 8.
8?
Smoked Camel cigarettes.
That'll
yes.
do it.
That'll do it, and it did do it. They had masks and goggles that they wore, but I suspect that also got into the lungs. And his face, I remember, the sulfur would cling into the creases of his face.
Life worked him very hard.
Yes, it did. I think the kinds of work he did were very hard on one's physical being. And I remember one of the things he said toward the end of his life was, 3C, I'm just used up. 3 a.m. kitchen. My father talking. For years it was land working me. Oil fields, cotton fields. Then I got some land. I worked it. Them days you could just about make a living. I was logging. Then I sent to Missouri. Mama come out. We got married. We got some kids. 5 kids. That kept us going. We bought some land near the water. It was cheap then. The water was right there. You just looked out the window. It never left the window. I bought a boat, 14-footer. There was fish out there then. You remember. We used to catch 6, 8 fish, clean them right out in the yard. I could have fished to China. I quit the woods. One day just walked out, took off my corks, said that's it. I went to the docks. I was driving winch. You had to watch to see nothing fell out of the sling. If you killed somebody, you'd never forget it. All those years I was just working. I was on edge every day, just working. You kids, I could tell you a lot, but I won't. It's winter. I play a lot of cards down at the tavern. Your mother. I have to think of excuses to get out of the house. You're wasting your time, she says. You're wasting your money. You don't have no idea, 3C. I run out of things to work for. Hell, why shouldn't I play cards? 3C, some days now, I just don't know.
He seems very present here, your father. I can hear him in your voice as you speak the poem.
In a way, I almost become my own father as I write the poem.
Talking to you there in the kitchen.
That's
in
right.
This manner.
He had been out playing cards. I went down, picked him up, brought him back, and he sat me down and really wanted to say some things about his life.
Life worked him very hard, but he worked life hard, too.
He wanted a lot out of it, but, he didn't know anything else but work. I remember at his funeral, there was a man there who'd been longshoring with him, and he gave a beautiful eulogy. He kept talking about when they would get ready to tie the ship up, how my father would say, "Come on, boys, we got it to do. We got it to do, boys." And how he would lift their spirits in their work, and had this feeling that there was a sanctity to work. Even though it was hard and difficult and it took everything you had, that as a man he was testing himself against that work every day. There was also the sense that one would never be recognized for that work, that other lives seemed to be noted more than those working class lives. And he was unsure that anything that he had done would really last. My mother remembers that she was beautiful. The falling snow has made her thoughtful and young in the privacy of our table with its netted candle and thick white plates. The serious faces of the lights breathe on the pine boards behind her. She is visiting the daughter never close or far enough away to come to. She keeps her coat on, calling into her girlhood by such forgetting I am gone or yet to happen. She sees herself among the townspeople, the country glances, slow with fields and sky as she passes or waits with a brother in the hot animal smell of the auction stand, sunlight, straw hats, a dog's tail brushing her bare leg. There are things, you know, I didn't have to beg, she said, for anything. The beautiful one speaks to me from the changed, proud face, and I see how little I've let her know of what she becomes. Years were never the trouble, or the white hair I braided near the sea on a summer day. Who she must have been is lost to me through some fault in my own reflection, and we will have to go on as we think we are, walking for no one's sake from the empty restaurant into the one color of the snow. Before us, the close houses, the brave and wondering lights of the houses.
In the poem, your mother remembers her own girlhood in Missouri.
Right, and this was a very isolated area in the Ozarks where she grew up. Very narrow dirt roads. When young men would come to court her, they generally came on horseback, and she could see them coming from a long ways off. And she could also see them when they left for a long time afterwards. She'd sit out on the porch and watch them.
Do you still see the girl in your mother now? In her face?
Yes, I do. I think there's a sense in which that beautiful one never left her.
The beauty.
Mm-hmm. Later on, my father remembered that beauty. Even as she aged, I think he kept seeing her as that beautiful woman that he courted in Missouri, and he met her at a party. She walked into the room, and he said, "Who is that beautiful black-haired woman?"
There she was.
And there she was.
His wife.
For life, yeah.
And she still is beautiful?
Yes, very beautiful. I think she's one of the most beautiful people I know. Even now, you are leaving. This is a poem about my father, about the fear I had, premonition really of his death. Not to let ourselves know by a hand held too long as this last, words no part of any other, like a mule trained to carry anything and not mean it. Just so these lips puffed from where you ran into yourself in a car the night before, the wheel turning through your mouth like something you might have said. I can't believe your face, that it could fall from here, let alone my own. Yet you prove it, the chin large now as a forehead. Some nearness has done this to you, or the lack of it. That scheme you had for making us rich, I want to tell you, it worked, though Alaska stayed due north, and you never touched. The spar tree axe swings from a tree you rigged to hold that clearing. I can't look up. The tree's too white, and cedar an easy fire. Father, some neglect is killing us all, but yours has a name of its own. Family, something gone on without you. Your eyes ruined and terrible, and a face, even now, you are leaving.
He's aging very quickly, and his face is almost caving in, it seems.
His face always had this sense of wear about it. And that, to me, was the sign of his ultimate mortality. All I had to do was look at his face. He had had an accident, in this case, a car accident, after having been drinking. And this injury to his face, especially then, amplified any fears I had.
Made it seem all the more mortal.
Right.
How did he die?
He ultimately died of lung cancer. But he did not want to go to the hospital, so we nursed him at home. And it was a slow, difficult death, as those deaths are. And it had to do with the industrial work that he did, but also I think it was really the smoking of cigarettes.
The smoking was probably the primary thing.
That was, yeah. He did it every day. In fact, even after he knew he was dying of lung cancer, he just kept right on smoking, and the cigarette fell out of his hand when he could no longer hold it and burned the shape of a cigarette into my mother's hardwood floor. And you could see it today if you were there.
His last cigarette, just
there
about.
There it was.
Yeah.
Right. It's not romantic, that death. Accomplishment. What not to do for him was hardest, for the life left in us argued against his going, like a moon banished in fullness, yet lingering far into morning, pale with new light, gradually a view of mountains, a sea emerging, its prickly channels and dark shelves breeding in the violet morning. Ships, too, after a while, some anchored, others moving by degree, as if to leave without affront this harbor, a thin shoal curved like an arm, ever embracing, ever releasing. He, too, was shaped to agreement, the hands no longer able to hold at rest on the handmade coverlet. His tongue arched forward in the open mouth, where breath on breath he labored, the task beyond all strength, so the body shuddered like a chill on the hinge of his effort, then rose again. After a time we saw the eyes gaze upward without appeal, eyes without knowing or need of knowing. Some in the room began to plead as if he meant to take them with him, and they were afraid. A daughter bent near, calling his name, then gave her own, firmly, like a dock he might swim or cling to. The breath eased, then drifted momentarily, considering or choosing, we did not know. At some point, we have to let him go. I know, she said. I know. In the last moments, the eyes widened, and, with the little strength left, he strained upward and toward. He had to be looking at something. You don't look at nothing that way. Not pain, but some sharpening beyond the visible. Not eagerness nor surprise, but as though he would die in time to intercept an onrushing world, for which he had prepared himself with that dead face.
This is the instant of his death.
Yes. He died on the couch. He made actually a little home for himself on the couch because he liked to see who was coming into the house, and everyone could visit him there. There was a sense that the morning that he did die, that he had waited for the whole household to get up and to be around.
To be there.
Yes.
To witness it.
It was very moving. There was almost like a wind in the room, I remember, at the time. You know, you hear of these things and you think, oh, everyone has imagined this. Well, I don't think it was imagined at all, because I was there, and I really felt this uplift in the room. It was very physical.
At this moment, the instant of his death, he seems to be looking at something.
Yes.
Just out of reach.
Yes, he's separating off from from all of us.
From you, from the others who are trying to hold him? Some of you seem to be holding him. Or
Yes.
trying to.
You know, we kept saying to him, breathe, breathe, because he was forgetting to breathe at that point. And then at one point, I realized we really had to stop this, because he really was at that point where he needed to go.
He needed to go.
Yes, and we needed to be able to let him go.
And not hold him.
Not hold him back, yeah. Because everything we had been doing was to say, stay here with us.
Yeah.
Don't leave us. And yet we knew that he had to go, you know. Black silk. She was cleaning. There is always that to do. When she found at the top of the closet his old silk vest, she called me to look at it, unrolling it carefully, like something live might fall out. Then we spread it on the kitchen table and smoothed the wrinkles down, making our hands heavy until its shape against Formica came back, and the little tips that would have pointed to his pockets lay flat. The buttons were all there. I held my arms out, and she looped the wide armholes over them. That's one thing I never wanted to be, she said, a man. I went into the bathroom to see how I looked in the sheen and sadness. Wind chimes off-key in the alcove. Then her crying, so I stood back in the sink light where the porcelain had been staring. Time to go to her, I thought, with that other mind, and stood still.
That other mind tells you to go to her.
It's really the presence of the Father.
Right. In you, through the vest.
Through the vest, right. It was by the act of putting that piece of clothing on that I suddenly came into another awareness of their relationship, of him as needed, but his inability to go and comfort her. And then, of course, when he died, I became that comforter. And it was a different kind of a thing. I mostly could go.
The vest clothes you. In that sense, you're clothed in him.
Yes.
Does this continue? Do you find that that his presence kind of pervades you?
Oh, yes, very much. He's the one person that I have been steadily able to evoke in my poems, and I think that's because I'm able to carry that presence in me, to call it up. Candle, lamp, and firefly. How can I think what thoughts to have of you with a mind so unready? What I remember most, you did not want to go. Then choice slipped from you, like snow from the mountain, so death could graze you over with the sweet muzzles of the deer moving up from the valleys, pausing to stare down and back toward the town. But you did not gaze back. Like a cut rose on the 5th day, you bowed into yourself, and we watched the shell-shaped petals drop in clumps, then, like wine, deepen into the white cloth. What have you written here on my sleep, with flesh so sure I have no choice but to stare back when your face and gestures follow me into daylight? Your arms, too weak at your death for embracing, closed around me and held, and such a tenderness was mixed there with longing that I asked, "Is it good where you are?" We echoed a long time in the kiss that was drinking me, daughter, 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 until I was gone, as when a sun drops over the rim of an ocean, gone, yet still there. Then the dampness, the chill of your body pulled from me into that space the condemned look back to after parting. Between sleep and death, I carry no proof that we met, no proof, but to tell what even I must call dream and gently dismiss. So does a bird dismiss one tree for another, and carries each time the flight between like a thing never done. And what is proof then, but some trance to kill the birds? And what are dreams, when the eyes open on similar worlds, and you are dead in my living?
You dreamed of him. You dreamed of your father after his death.
Yes, it was a dream, and yet it was very real. And it was one of those dreams that you just couldn't put off with saying, well, that was a dream. Now I have to go about my life, and let's just forget that.
What happened in the dream?
Exactly as I describe it here. He wasn't able to embrace anyone at the end, and that ungiven embrace was given in this dream.
Mm-hmm.
It's that wonderful way in which your dream life gives some completions that don't actually happen in the daylight walking around life.
So your life was affected very much by the dream that
Very
you
much,
had.
yes. I felt very happy after I had the dream, very moved. And as if I had actually been in touch with my father. Even though it happened in a dream, I'm not discounting it because it happened in a dream. As far as I'm concerned,
It's real.
it's real. Sudden journey. Maybe I'm 7 in the open field, the straw grass so high only the top of my head makes a curve of brown in the yellow. Rain then, first a little, a few drops on my wrist, the right wrist. More rain, my shoulders, my chin, until I'm looking up to let my eyes take the bliss. I open my face, let the teeth show. I pull my shirt down past the collarbones. I'm still a boy under my breast spots. I can drink anywhere. The rain, my skin shattering. Up, suddenly needing to gulp. Turning with my tongue, my arms out. Running, running in the hard, cold plenitude of all those who reach earth by falling.
We've been visiting with poet Tess Gallagher and listening to poems drawn mostly from her books, Under Stars and Willingly, both published by Grey Wolf Press. I'm Henry Lyman. Thanks for being with us.
Poems to a Listener was produced by Henry Lyman in cooperation with WFCR Amherst, Massachusetts. Financial assistance was provided by the Massachusetts Council on the Arts and Humanities, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Massachusetts Foundation for Humanities and Public Policy.